All right. Well, it seems like the stars briefly aligned last weekend as the both of us, Tyson and Kid Moyer, were able to see the sequel to Dune 1,
Mm. The stars
Dune 2.
aligned, the sand dunes shifted. Some would say.
Yeah, there were some shifting of the sand dunes going on, and so yes, we did both go and see Dune 2, not together. We're in separate countries, but spiritually we saw Dune 2, and
Mm.
we're just gonna give our thoughts on it now that I've had about a day to digest it a little bit, and I think some people will be pleased with what we think. I know I certainly liked the movie, so I'll preface it with that. Tyson,
Yeah,
just
I
really
would.
quick, one sentence.
We would love to be a contrarian and go against the grain, but it's tough with a film like this. It's good, guys. But we'll go into why.
We used up all that ammo on Rebel Moon.
Yeah.
we sold our soul for that one. So we just
But
have to be
no,
normal.
I still stand
now.
by it though. Rebel Moon wasn't that bad, and you guys are fucking delusional if you think it's a 9%. It's not 9%. So yeah.
It's definitely not a 9%. I did see the trailer for the second part, and this will be the last time I bring up that show until it comes out. But it looks fine. It looks like there's a second part coming out, but people aren't too excited about it. But there's one thing that I have to get off my chest regarding Dune. And it's a larger conversation that I've been having not only with myself for a while, but also other moviegoers or people who enjoy television shows. And that is books and movies are two completely different forms of media and storytelling. I don't even know if I would classify books as media. Books, and you've heard me say this a million times before, just for raw hours, you can put 30 hours into a book, reading a book, building a story, building depth and character. When it comes to a movie, you only have 2 to 3 hours to tell a story. So they are completely different forms of storytelling. And for some reason, when people go and see a movie or TV show based on a book, they expect it to be a one-for-one representation of what's in a book, even though technically, and this is before we're even getting beyond technically, just from being able to experience it as a human, it's not possible. It's not possible to capture all of the depth in a book and put it into a movie. You can show reverence towards the source material, which I think this movie does flawlessly, but you shouldn't be expecting a movie or show to match your book. And I always say to people, if you love the book so much, then just go fucking read it then. Go read it. I don't need you to tell me, oh, well, it wasn't like the book in this way. It wasn't like the book. Okay, well, the book will always be there. The book will never change. You can always go and read the book. So I just need to preface it with saying, I do not care if you read the book, okay? I'm looking at these movies as if I'm a Dune idiot. I was born after, let's just say this is the first time Dune has ever existed in my life. I didn't even know the book was a thing. I did, obviously, but let's just pretend I don't know anything about it. That is how I approach this movie. And that's how I approach movies based on books that I have read. Because I already know the book exists and it's probably good and I'd like the book if I read it, but I don't care. I'm watching the movie. I'm watching the Dune movie, Dune 1 and Dune 2, and that's what I'm concerned about. And honestly, this is just
it's like mathematically, it's like if in the book the author writes about how the guy's experiencing like 1,000 emotions at one time, how would you depict that in a film? Like you only have so many facial expressions you can show on screen at one time. There's some words that are lost in translation, but I think it goes the other way as well. Sometimes a picture really can be worth 1,000 words, and I think that's where like the two hours and 3 hours thing, it doesn't really matter as long as they can show like the right type of imagery. I think they can pull off
I
same
think
type of effect as a book.
Well, visual representation is the advantage that the screen has over books. So as long as they're paying close attention to that, you already have a good head start. But I wanted to point out, I really think that people stick to the books because they feel accomplished for reading them. So after they see the movie, they go, well, in the book, it was this, this, and this. And they get to talk about how they read the book and, imply that you didn't. So now there's some sort of resource on this entire, universe because they've read the book. For instance, I read the Witcher books. I like the Witcher books. I don't care that the second season of The Witcher literally takes a detour from the books completely because the books exist. I don't care. You're already seeing Geralt do stuff on the show. You're already seeing Ciri look really hot, and it's fine. You can almost look at it as a reimagining of his adventure. I don't care. You're not bastardizing the books because the books haven't changed. They'll always be like that until the end of time. So why do you care so much when it's changed just don't watch the movie then. I don't know what to tell you. And the biggest issue that I have is that there's some people who have seen, and this will lead into our conversation about the movie itself. There are some people who have seen this movie and thought, oh, they strayed too far from the books. Well, I don't know how far they did, but if I were to have read it, I would not have cared because I like this movie. I like this movie standing alone apart from the book as a large-scale sci-fi epic, which we're also starved of in this day and age. And before we get started, I'll just say one small difference that someone told me between the book and the movie. Something they pulled off well in the movie that's not easy to do because it's a little off the beaten path of what you would expect in a typical fiction was the baby that Lady Jessica was having was talking to her while in the womb. I thought the way that they showed that in the movie was really interesting. And
that's kind of funny because I was trying to decipher if she was lying about that or if the baby really was speaking to her.
Well,
was
the fact
real?
that
Or was that
I assumed it was real, but your idea right there just provokes further thought. That is pretty interesting. I mean, she could be tripping off the worm juice and imagining that her fetus is talking to her. But just the difference,
5
even
minutes
in
in
that,
the worm juice and chill, and she hits you with that baby talk.
and your fetus goes goo goo gaga. Like we need a messiah. But so that character in the book is a 2-year-old girl that speaks like an adult and is apparently doing a bunch of flips on the battlefield in the book. So I'm like, you know what? I think I'm good with what I got in the movie instead. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. So, and when you dig into a little bit, it's like, well, actually, this character was a lot more like this. I'm like, you're describing character deficiencies or small differences that they obviously had to change for the big screen to make a, sometimes characters get a little bit more one-dimensional. You don't have as much time to flesh them out, so they have to make them represent only one specific thing instead of many different things over time. So yeah, there's some character changes you might not like, but I feel like even if you were to argue about, honoring original source material, this movie seems to have had that in mind when it was made. So you can't really hate on them for that. So you have any final thoughts on, the difference between book media and what's on the screen? I just say treat them as two separate things. You'll always have your book. So,
I'll get into it a little bit. I was going to save this for later, but fuck it, let's just do it now. This movie is kind of why I disagree with Moyer, half disagree on whether movies can be art or not. I believe that movies can be art if the director's artistic vision is not warped or twisted by a profit motive. When the gravity around the film centers around the profit motive, it ceases to become art, in my opinion. And when you have directors like Denis Villeneuve, I feel like they demand a certain level of respect, and I know for a fact that they demand like total creative control when they make a film. So I feel like it's fine to call these types of films art. And you can tell that Denis is like a genuine fan of the source material that he's adapting. And even if he was to make an original film, you could tell that he would be a genuine fan of like the categories of inspiration that he pulls from as well. So good effort by Denis,
Yeah, I won't I won't go into the argument of what I think art is, but if you were to tell me that you think movies are art and they are proper examples of it, then this would probably be a really positive move for your argument is talking about this movie because it really, cinematically it was beyond the pale. It was amazing. So
dude, Tale of Two Cities, right? As I was watching this one, which turned out to be a great film, I saw this I saw this fucking trailer for the new Ghostbusters film, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, and dude, I had so much secondhand embarrassment. I nearly walked out of the fucking cinema, dude. Like, it, it's so. It looks like a fucking. It doesn't look real. Like,
Well, that lends towards also my argument of movies
dude,
just being purely entertainment. You know, the most my most unfavorite part of that trailer is what's the guy's name, that the main guy that's in Ghostbusters,
Bill
Bill
Murray.
Murray. He's like blah 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 in uniform. Would you? It's just like, okay, so you're referencing something from another thread from another entertainment based movie from the 80s, and now people can get that it's just stupid. It's just silly to me. Like, why am I supposed to? I'm not taking your movie seriously on purpose because it's not an art form in that
You know,
sense.
if
It's
someone
more
wanted to
just
make
a
an
media
argument that
product.
if someone wanted to make the argument that movies are purely like a carnival ride or a theme park attraction, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, that would be like the landmark case for them to make their example on. That has zero soul whatsoever. So
this
yeah.
this trailer touched you deeply. So I'm gonna go into a little bit of how I remember Dune 2 from watching it yesterday. I actually got up for a 10 a.m. matinee, which as you get older, you start to value matinees more and more, especially because there's a lot of like-minded people in the theater just getting down to business,
What
right?
is that? A
A
matinee.
matinee? Oh, wow. That must be an American term, though. It means you see the movie during the day instead of at night. So
Oh,
there's
okay.
usually matinee deals too. You know, that's not why I do it, but I enjoy seeing a movie during the day. It's usually less
Mm.
crowded, and it just, I don't know. There's something that you feel a lot more focused when you're seeing a movie that way, and it kind of like fits in your schedule a little bit
Mm.
easier. But as far as continuation goes, from the way the first movie ended, and I can't believe some people were saying this, I thought the first movie ended perfectly. You can tell
Yeah.
it was the triggering, the beginning of the hero's story starting at the end of that movie where he finally kills a man with his bare hands and starts to realize his potential as a warrior and someone who could be ingratiated into the Fremen. I thought the way they did that, I talked to a few people and they were like, I can't believe it just ended there. I'm like, what? That was an unbelievable part for it to end at. I thought they handled
I
that
mean,
so
it's
well.
sort of like the natural conclusion to like where you would end it for part one, right? Like, where else would you end it? It doesn't make sense to end it anywhere else.
I mean, I'd even argue as a standalone, if two were never to be made and this was just a telling of the first half of the Dune book, then I thought it was phenomenal. So yeah,
Mm.
I think you're making sense there for sure. And I'm only gonna be praising this movie until we get towards the end, then I'll say my small hangups with it. But just the gap between, and I was lucky, I actually caught the first Dune on a plane ride back from vacation, which made my flight a lot shorter. So and then saw it the next day. So it was almost seamless kind of transition into the next movie. So when the second one starts up, he's obviously finding himself within the Fremen and battling between trying to convince the believers and the non-believers, and then he has visions of whether going south is bad, and then his relationship with Zendaya's character Chani starts developing, and you can also tell that his mom, you know, has plans for him, and I think there was starting to be, and this movie didn't show it as much as I was thinking they would, there was definitely some friction that was starting to develop between Paul, his mom, and Chani as the movie was going on. But you know, they
Mm.
engage in guerrilla warfare. They finally go to the south, and he converts all of the not. You know, he works his way towards covering all the non-believers as well and engaging a galactic jihad. So that's an oversimplified version of the plot, but there's two things that I want to point out right away. And the first thing is a lot of people think that this story is based on, you would say, Muhammad in the Middle East, or some people say there's a lot of Christ allegories as well, but mainly Muslim conquest. This, and I only thought about this a little bit and didn't dig too far into it, but one of, if not some would say, the greatest movies of all time was, and it was based on an autobiography, is Lawrence of Arabia, and it's about a man in the British Army who unites tribes within the Middle East to fight against Turkish Empire. And
Mm.
it Dune was heavily heavily influenced by the autobiography from this man, and they ended up making it a 3.5-hour movie called Lawrence of Arabia, and I couldn't recommend it enough. It's one of the greatest movies of all time. And it's better than any movies that we'll ever talk about on this show. But you can see the influence from that movie in this production, and that's because Dune itself was inspired by that. So I just want to tell everyone that if you like what's happening in this movie, as far as like uniting tribes, messiah complexes, difficult political situations, go see Lawrence of Arabia. That was the progenitor of all of it. The second thing that I liked the most about this movie, which I think is rare, especially in Hollywood these days, is it is very easy to take the message of religion as a control mechanism and use it to shame people as a plot device. This movie handled Paul and his struggle with his messiah complex and the people that he was overseeing really, really well. They were so mature about the issue of coming to grips with being a messiah and having ownership over people and the responsibility that comes along with that, and also to the point where it can get I was going to say a little bit out of control, a lot of bit out of control when you're waging an intergalactic jihad. I think the movie was mature about how it showed Paul kind of coming to terms with himself, and it wasn't just religion is really bad and Paul is really bad. They skated the line between him being good and bad really well, and they weren't ham-fisted about the fact that I think Paul Atreides eventually becomes kind of a totalitarian, which some people would view as a bad thing, and some people don't view it as a bad thing. But that was probably my favorite part of the movie that stuck out, because there were even times when he wasn't convinced that he was the Kwisatz Haderach,
The Son Al Gaib.
Yeah, and then also that was one of my favorite parts, and the memes about it are hilarious, like Hassan al-Baib, or whatever. Which, by the way, Javier Bardem, he absolutely killed it. I mean, he was no one's really talking about him as an actor with this movie, but I mean, I think that's just because they assume greatness from him. But that was probably mainly what I got out of it, is that they paced themselves out in this movie. They could have went straight to the war. They could have done a lot more action.
This is going to sound really dumb, but who was Javier Bardem in the film?
He was the guy that said, who was on Paul's team the entire time, who's like, Hassan al-Baib,
that's Javier Bardem?
Yes. Yeah.
He looks so different. What the fuck?
I did not know for sure until after the movie when I looked it up, because his face looked a little different. I think he was a little wider, and he's getting a bit older. But
dude, if you told me that was like some actor from Pakistan or something, I would totally believe that.
I mean, Jesus, that's how much he lived the part. My one friend was like, yeah, that was Benicio del Toro. I'm like, no, it was not Benicio del Toro. It was Javier Bardem. I know, it's just like a misidentification there. So he nailed it. But they paced themselves out really well with Paul doubting himself, and then the slow transformation where he was kind of convinced, and it was obviously after he drank the worm juice, which I think is probably the pivotal mechanism that changed not only his mom but him. They turned completely insane after they did that. He became convinced, and he eventually lost Shani's faith in just him as a person, because he became kind of not power crazed, but just he started to become faithful to himself as a leader and winning at all costs, finding a way out for the Atreides family. There was a lot there that they fleshed out with him, and then the fighting towards the end was only about a half hour. I'm okay with that. I liked that. I felt like the fight at the end was really well earned when that first nuke goes off, and I could feel there was a lot of showing, not a lot of telling, and that's what I'm here for. So I know what I like most about the movie. What do you think? What were some things that stuck out to you that you were a fan of?
So way more action than Dune 1, which I like, but they did masterfully. Every action scene was done with purpose. I'll say that off the bat. But the thing I like the most, right? People like to say that, the acting from Chalamet was mid, but honestly, I liked it a lot. It felt like someone. It really felt like someone who was unwillingly thrust into the position of being a leader would feel like. The thing about Paul Atreides is that he's supposed to be a prince with like a royal education, right? He's supposed to be learned in sword fighting, the political landscape. A lazier director would have introduced him going through the trials with the Fremen, and then afterwards, after all the trials and he succeeds, he's like indistinguishable from the Fremen. He's like one of them, right? But that's not what happens. You can see the prince in him through his knowledge, through the way he fights, and even the way he became a leader. It sounds kind of weird, but the scene where he makes the emperor kneel.
Yes.
The way he carries himself during that scene, it feels like what your average prince would do if his family was murdered and he had to learn to survive with a nomadic tribe of people, and then he suddenly gets a chance to get justice for his father. That seems like what a prince would do in their shoes. Does that make sense?
It's actually, well, I don't want to say actually because that sounds rude, but that is a really good point, because the character he has to play is an amalgamation of a Fremen tribes person who's built to be their leader, and also a prince who is informed of ruling through love by his father that was brutally murdered. And when you combine those two things, you have a character that has to show a lot of sides at once. But when he started acting with authority,
not a lot of actors could show like that many layers at one time. It's a really fucking difficult task.
Yeah, and when you watch the first movie again, you see this meek, princely character, unsure if he's able to live up to his father's expectations, and his father tells him, he's like, "You're my son. That's enough for me." And he starts to become more sure of himself as time goes on, and to be able to see the character kind of grow into that, and really, Dune isn't about a space war. It's about Paul Atreides learning more about himself and whether he is meant to be this leader and what it is to wield power. And they show that. They go out of their way to show that in the movie quite well. And they don't have to do that. It could have just been a political sci-fi epic, but they knew that Chalamet could pull off the character that they wanted to show him as, and his growth is what was driving the entire story. So yeah, I think that's a great point, and I think his acting was incredible and complimentary to him. My favorite actor in the entire movie is Rebecca Ferguson, and I think she
was so hot in that, dude. Holy shit!
She was. They're gonna say, "Oh yeah, she's such a great actress." Like, no, she was so hot.
Man.
Have you seen her on the press tour? By the way, she is out of her mind. She must be on Ambien 24/7.
Why
something.
Is she swagging out? What's she doing?
Oh, she's just one of those completely out there movie stars, and Florence Pugh is kind of her handler on the red carpet. So you see a bunch of clips of Rebecca Ferguson just kind of wandering around saying random stuff until Florence Pugh like wrangles her back in and says, "You need to get in this picture, or we have an interview at this time," or whatever.
It's a fucking travesty that the baby that she carries in the film isn't mine. Holy shit, dude.
Hey, there's still time. There's always still time. So I thought
second thing I want to get off. I really like the romance between Chani and Paul. And Zendaya, I'm sorry, but is cute in a girl next door kind of way. I'm so fucking tired, and I hate all these fucking dumbass boomers on Twitter who just learned the phrase third worldism for the first time. He's like, dude, this movie's third worldist propaganda and just close-up shots of brown people. No. You're just a sullen husk of a person who's incapable of nuance. You're retarded, okay? So let's see you act half as good as Zendaya did. You can't. You dumb fat fucking boomers probably look like clowns if you tried to act next to her. So relax, okay? Zendaya's fine. She's good even. She's the tomboy friend that you grow up next to, and then once you both puberty, you develop feelings for her, and then you start to recognize her as a woman. She acted fine, and yeah, One thing that they focused on was this like push and pull dynamic between Chani and Paul. Like where as time deepened, both her fear and love for Paul goes deeper as well. Like her love deepens because she gets to know him, she gets to know his bravery, his willingness to fight for the Fremen. But then her fear also deepens because she realizes like what he's capable of and what he might do as he steps in the role of the Messiah for the Fremen, and that's an interesting dynamic. I like that.
Yeah, and I think there was a certain point where the man that she fell in love with was leaving her because she doesn't love Paul because he's the Messiah. That's probably that's probably a reason why she doesn't like him. She likes him as a person. I think she liked that that prince that he was at that time and how he tried to ingratiate himself into the tribe. But then once he started becoming more than that, he was he was losing her. It's like, I love you, like I love the person that you are, and not this, I don't even want to say overly ambitious, but just this person that's kind of becoming a completely different person as he, you know, gets carried away with possible delusions of grandeur of being the and that makes you a little angry at Chaney's character during the movie too, because you think, what, he's balling out of control, why do you not like him? Like, he's going sicko mode on these people.
That's a tough
you know
dynamic. It's like, you know, I get it,
is.
but my dude swag it out. You know, I'm gonna ride with my dude, dude. I can't help it.
I know. It's funny you say that, because first off, I totally agree with what you're saying about the Zendaya. First off, she is obviously gorgeous, and if you're some person that has a problem with third worldism, or that they're showing, you know, people of a different color on screen, you should actually like that, because it's showing people in their correct ethnic habitat in the location where
I
they're
know, right?
supposed to be. Why are these you know, nomadic tribes in the desert of darker colored descent? It's like, gee, why don't, like, that's literally accurate. That's the way it's supposed to be. But
Middle
for some
Eastern
reason, you have a
people
problem with that
on the
too.
desert planet. What is this? It's like, are you brain dead? What the fuck?
They've gone woke. So, but yeah, it's funny because I think there was a little bit more they could have done to flesh out that relationship, because there were certain points where I thought to myself, what do you like about Paul? Like, you seem to be having sex with him and spending all your time with him, but anytime you're in public with him, you're just shaking your head and just like SMH my head in disapproval of what he's doing. It's like, she's like, it's like, you know that Twitter meme, it's like shaking my head during X so people know I disapprove of it. That's her with Timothy all the time.
SMH in the streets. SMH
Yeah.
in the streets.
There you go. So I would have liked a lot more friction between her and his mom, because they had obvious, you know, oppositional feelings towards the future of Paul, and they had some stare downs with each other early on, which I think got that point across. So, but yeah, I mean, I think I want to see that movie with Zendaya. Well, I'm not going to see it. Maybe I'll catch it sometime, or just clips from it on when they hit YouTube. That tennis movie that Zendaya's in, where she has a threesome with two guys. So that's our next review.
Hold up.
I'm just kidding. But what did you?
Just a little bit more. You know, maybe it's cliched, but I also love the cinematography. You know, it has the same feel as Blade Runner, the other one that Denis directed. And you know, I guess I'm a sucker for that style, but the effects were good, and more importantly, the camera work really, like, and the special effects, it really helped to build the universe of Dune. You know, like when the Harkonnen were like monitoring Arrakis, you know, and they had like this holographic 3D display that showed like each spice extractor, and then when the Fairmen attacked the one, they would turn red on the holographic thing. You know, things like that. It really makes the universe feel like it's realistic, like it's immersive. It exists. You know, exactly. Yeah.
My favorite part about the Dune universe, and they captured in the first one and did an even better job with it in the second one, it is hard to have upscaled sci-fi epic the size of the ships, the sandworms, and feeling that in relation to being a human being, they captured so well in Dune. And that lends to it of being a sci-fi epic in itself. You think large, grand, you know, opulent ships, you know, one belongs to the Emperor, large sand barges, sandworms, nuclear missiles, you know, they were capturing the physical scale well, and it's really hard to do that and still include detail, and they did both of those. So if you combine the scale of what they were doing and the objects they were working with alongside the cinematography that you're talking about, which was great, it's just so you need so much skill to combine those two things, and they did it. And it's just like, people are saying it's a like generational Star Wars like sci-fi film, and of our time, at least within the 2020s, I would say so. If you were to just take the last,
I can't think of a single sci-fi film that approaches Dune, the two parts of Dune, in the past 10 years. Like, what sci-fi film comes close? I can't name one.
Certainly none of the Star Wars movies. So certainly none of those, because this is, you could tell there was craft, care, and reverence made during this movie. And also you could see the actors, they enjoyed making it too. I think that you're saying his name correctly, because I always just say Dennis Villeneuve in my head, which makes him Hispanic even though he's French. So
Dennis the villain.
Villeneuve. Yeah, exactly. But he seems to run a good set, and people seem to be happy with what they're doing when they make these movies.
Also, I want to give a nod to the studios as well. I feel like you could feel throughout the film that the studios didn't have a hand in this one. They just gave Denis $190 million and said, "Go work, do whatever you want," you know. And I respect that. So props to them.
Oh, absolutely. So put it this way: the acting's great, the visuals are great. The number one issue I have with movies that come out today, because they usually go through a chop shop before making it to the screen, the pacing was great. Okay. The evolution in Paul, which is the most critical part of the movie to me, because that's all the first movie was building his character. The payoff in his realization of whether he was the Messiah or not, and how he acted, how he discussed, they did an incredible job with that. We haven't even gotten to the sound and audio for this movie. You know, you talk about even the weapons that they use. This, when I think it's the Harkin or whatever they're called. What are they called? You said it before.
Harkonnen?
The Arcan. Yeah, when the Harkonnen are looking for the Fremen earlier in the movie, and they're getting popped in the head with these pistols.
Yep.
You know, the sound and the direction after that happens, it kind of jolted me out of my seat a little bit. And the scores are obviously unbelievable. So when you're just taking it on technicalities of rating movies and the various facets of them, so you have visual, storytelling, acting, sound, which one of those is bad? None of them. So once you get past those, then you can start nitpicking, and that by that point you've already accepted that it's an incredible movie. So do you have anything good left to say about it that was still on your mind? Because I think we talked about kind of the main good things. I have literally one or two really minor nitpicks that I'll get into now,
last thing I'll say positive is it awakened something in me. So seeing Rebecca Ferguson in that Reverend Mother kind of thing, where she's manipulative, she's controlling, she's in charge of a large group of people, it kind of remind me of Olenna Tyrell from Game of Thrones. You remember her?
Is that from the newer ones that are prequels, or is
no,
from
the actual Game of Thrones, the Tyrell matriarch, the grandma that controls everything?
Oh, okay. Yeah, she ended up drinking poison and dying in the show.
But then
I know you're talking about.
In Game of Thrones, she had a dumbass husband who just didn't do anything, just went off and got drunk and shit, and then she controlled all the family politics. It's I would love to be that husband, but for Rebecca Ferguson, just a fucking dumbass retard, and then she can control the people, and I'm just smacking her at night, and living happy life, dude. I would love that.
So, you haven't talked about her enough for me to let you do that. I am the true Rebecca Ferguson simp on this podcast. You know that I've been talking about her for a while now, so you could go on back to Zendaya or whoever. You can even have Anya Taylor-Joy. It's fine. Actually, I was sipping harder for Lea Seydoux before the movie came out, so it's good. I mean, the actress bait in here is phenomenal. So you know what else I didn't realize until this movie came out? I didn't know that she wasn't actually, I forget what his dad's name, Paul's dad's wife. She was his concubine. I didn't know that. I didn't they weren't actually married. And there's a line in the first movie where he says, "I should have married you," And one last bit of praise, I was talking about earlier with the fetus talking supposedly to its mother before it's born, which is think about that as an anti-abortion argument, a pro-life argument with your talking intergalactic fetus. But there's some strange stuff in this movie, you know, and a warrior planet being shined on by a white sun with a gladiator pit. You have a
That was
series
so
of like,
sick. I like that.
that was great. You have a bunch of deceptive sisters like intermarrying within royal houses to have kids on purpose. You have a talking fetus. There's some strange stuff in this movie that some people would shy away from when you're doing an appealing kind of reductive large scale sci-fi epic, but they leaned into them, and because the dialogue, the pacing, and the acting is so great, they weren't jarring at all within the movie. It was almost understandable that this fetus was talking to its mother. I'm like, yeah, of course the baby's doing that. Why would the baby not be doing that? So, and I thought it was really good. And you know what? And this goes back to my first point. The balance between belief and non-belief and being able to keep both of those suspended for the entire movie. It's like, you know, did Paul actually survive the worm juice because he's part, what is it, Harkonnen?
Yep.
Because he's part that, yeah, Harkonnen. Did he survive it because of that? And he kind of acknowledges that at one point, or is it because he is the Kwisatz Haderach? You know, he's Al Gaib. So I think that up until the very end, you're still guessing whether it is the true prophecy fulfilled, and that's the point. That really is the point of the movie is belief, the power of belief, not only in yourself but in someone else, and the dangers that come from that. The movie showed that flawlessly, and that's not an easy message to get across in itself without being ham-fisted. You know, if he were a hack director, it could have been, as I said, you know, he's just an all-powerful demigod and that's it, and everything could have been written easily on paper, or the opposite. You know, it's really bad when you have a demigod.
Can you imagine if if Snyder directed Dune?
Yeah, exactly. It would be, if Paul Atreides would be hung like on a fake like sand cross and be like, dude, dying for the sins of the Fremen people. Yeah,
it'd be 4 hours of fucking slow-mo shots of the fucking nukes going off or some shit like that.
Yeah. What's something that he could carry as a fake cross? You know, he's like, I don't know. Yeah, he's like carrying an RPG as a.
He used to carry the nuke on his back as a cross. He used to carry the nuke
to bring freedom and forgiveness to the Fremen people. You know, just like the most ham-fisted Christ allegory you could possibly imagine. So there you go. Everyone who got mad during our Rebel Moon video, there you go. There's some negative commentary about Snyder to keep you guys a little bit happy there. So, as
you know, if Tarantino directed Dune, I wonder how he would sneak in the N-word into that.
I wonder how you would sneak feet into that.
Yeah.
The Fremen people need to sniff each other's feet after every battle. So I actually liked the, also kind of winding down here before I say some of my issues, I did like that the guerrilla tactics that were used. It wasn't just straight to a large scale war. That guerrilla attack on that, you know, that sand, like a harvesting machinery, that was a great scene. And you know how he needed to have trust in her and she needed to have trust in him, not only as a couple but as warriors together to take down that helicopter. Like I liked all of that. I mean, and like what you said, the movie had more like, first off, there was enough action in the first one to keep me engaged. There was more than that in the second one, but they didn't overplay their hand. So I thought they did a good job with that. So if you don't have anything else, actually, I might let you go first on this one. You got any issues with it winding down?
I feel like the only gripe I had was, and it's not really even a gripe, but some areas of the pacing were to be desired. You know, I feel like if they fleshed out the part where he made the decision to actually go out and be this messiah figure, I think I would have liked to see that, because it feels like he drank the worm juice and then it somehow just cuts to him like leading a group of people. I want to see him develop into that person more, you know?
Yeah, there could have been an introspective moment, and someone I talked to made a really good point that apparently a lot of Paul's indecision comes from him thinking to himself, which is explained in the book and like fleshed out in the book. But in the movie, they kind of use foils. They used Channing Moore as a foil for him, or they used Javier Bardem's character, calling him Al Gaib. Like they showed through people, you know, them thinking who Paul should be, kind of informed his decision, and then he kind of acted from that point. And you could see it's really hard to show him just thinking about it all the time on a screen. You know, in a book you can just be like, and Paul thought to himself, am I the Al-Qaeda? You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I totally get that. I'll tell you what, I think one of my there's a lot of favorite scenes, and I'll definitely have to see it again before I settle on a final one. But one of, and my current favorite scene of the movie is when he first stands in front of the Fremen people in the north, and he steps on the stage, and someone says, "Why are you talking? You can't be talking now. This is a sacred place." And he talks over him because he's taking ownership of the situation and showing that is the old way. I am the new way, and listen to me.
So
that
based.
part, that was also like Chalamet's acting. I mean, obviously towards the end when he's talking to the Emperor, that was masterfully done by him. But that was the first moment where, to me, he went from being the meek prince to the ruler, to the Messiah, and he acted that scene so well. I can't wait to see it again. I honestly can't wait to see it again and see that part again. But if you were to talk about issues that I may have had, and it's funny because you said it as kind of a positive, and I might come around to it as a positive myself. I don't think that there was enough romance between him and Chani to make it convincing towards me. I think she acted as a great foil for him against the Messiah, but there wasn't enough there to make me feel like they were falling in love. I think I could fall in love with Zendaya. I think it's believable that he did, but for some reason, her character didn't feel like, for instance, there were a lot of scenes where she was talking to that other Fremen girl who ended up getting, I think, killed by a blowtorch. By Austin Butler's character. That girl felt like a Fremen to me. The way she talked was a little informal, and she showed a good job of being what a female male acting soldier might be. Chani didn't feel like that to me. She felt a little bit like Zendaya playing a Fremen character. I don't think she did a bad job. I think she did whatever she could with what she was given. But to me, she just didn't feel like a true Fremen tribeswoman as compared to some of the other ones that were right next to her. So
I feel
like
that's why Paul likes her in the first place, right? She's different.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Again, I could be talked out of it, but that was kind of my initial impression.
No, I mostly agree with you. I feel like the romance between them was natural, and it was natural for them to fall in love with each other, but it would have helped if they fleshed it out with more scenes. Like, you know, maybe just give 10 extra minutes on showing them do some like banal stuff together, like
and
that would help.
That's a good point. And I don't like getting stuff hand delivered, but it would have been nice if she just pointed out a few times why she likes him so much. You know, like, I love you for being Atreides or something. You know,
I know why. Because I mean, if you know, you know. But I'll try to explain this. Honestly, I feel like part of the reason why she likes him so much is because he's a foreigner. Like, he's got the foreign element into him.
He's got that white boy swag.
It's not even that, because, dude, I'll tell you what. When I went to Vietnam, right? So for those of you who don't know, I'm Asian, and I went to Vietnam. I should be like amongst my own people, but because I was from New Zealand, I was considered a foreigner. And dude, I was swagging out with all the girls in the office when I was working there. Like, they just gave me so much special privileges because I was a foreigner, and they just, you know, they just like the element of like something new.
Maybe there is some insight into female nature on that one, because anyone who's ever gone to a new school, started a new job, or me myself when I was overseas, the attention you get just from being from somewhere different, that is apparent. That is a really good point. I'll have to be on board with that. And then one other thing, and I can't articulate this, and I feel bad bringing it up, not fully knowing exactly what I'm saying. There's something that felt a little off about Austin Butler's character's introduction and conclusion in his duel with Paul, because I felt like they didn't have a true rivalry. They had a discussed rivalry between different parties, but you know, I didn't feel the malice between them. He was kind of the stepping stone for Paul to show that he was this true warrior outside of the Fremen people and could take on other, other races and planets. And it was kind of like him saying, I am, because that one was, they were formulating Austin Butler's character of being the other Kwisatz Haderach over Paul if Paul had failed, but that was Paul's way of showing that
they could have fixed that
true one.
if like during one of the Fremen attacks, like the guerrilla attacks on the spice things, Austin Butler comes on one of those like helicopters just after the attack, and they have a stare off with like they both have a stare off before running off with their own parties. Like just 2 minute scene like that, just to develop the thing that would have been cool.
Yeah, because his character was cool. He was acted well. He was chilling. He was all the things that a great enemy should be, but I don't think there was enough of a relationship between him and Paul to make. I didn't really hate him. I didn't hate him as a bad guy. I thought he was kind of cool. Yeah. I was rooting for him a little bit. I'm like, yeah, Bautista's character is completely incompetent. You have your fat, like, annoying uncle who you should just kill anyways. Like, I was rooting for him a little bit, and maybe that was intentional too. But I think he should have killed someone important in Paul's life, and I don't know if that happens in the book or not. Again, I don't care. But if he had killed maybe Josh Brolin's character, or Javier Bardem's character, who's probably going to be important in Messiah in the next movie, that maybe would have maybe made me hate him a little bit more, made their final battle a bit more meaningful to me. Instead, it was just like the Emperor was like, yeah, well, he'll fight in my stead. We hate each other, and then that was kind of it. Sorry, I can't do a Christopher Walken accent. That was an attempt. It was terrible. So I thought he was great. And I thought Florence Pugh was great, obviously, but that goes without saying. And I also loved how he just dropped this bitch like right away. He's like, I'll always love you. And there, the white girl is down the hall to the left, and then just goes and marries her. So
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Can't blame him though. Florence Pugh did look pretty good in this one.
I mean, she's flawless. I'm a huge fan. So all right. Let's do our out of tensies. Let's figure out what we're doing there. So, after talking this through with you and kind of getting some thoughts in my head out of my mouth, I wanted to give this an 8, but I think it's kind of a once in a lifetime film. And I'll never, and I read a tweet that I thought was kind of cool. It was like, you'll never, and this isn't true really, but it felt a little true. You'll never get the chance to see this in theaters ever again. Maybe 20 years from now, they'll put it back in theaters, or 6 months from now, they'll put it back in theaters as an experience. But I'll never forget when I saw Dune 2 in theaters. I won't for the rest of my life. And that's rare when a movie does that to me. It's a 9 out of 10 movie. I thought it was great. So 9 out of 10.
Wow. Okay. This might be the first time we've both given the same score, because mine was also a 9.
Really? Yeah.
I was gonna give it 8.5, but the just the sheer magnitude of being able to adapt Dune and do it this well, I think it just deserves even more praise.
I was going to give it
a fucking gargantuan task, and Denis pulled it off. So hats off to him, and hats off to all the actors who pulled off a phenomenal job as well.
Yeah, because I was originally going to give it an 8, and that's because knocking off points of what I explained to you that I had problems with. But as I said them, I realized they're not that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things, and you can explain them away well. And honestly, I give it under a 9 under the context that a 10 out of 10 movie is like a life-affirming spiritual experience. So that's reserved for a movie that probably doesn't exist, and one that I may have not even seen in my lifetime. So 9 out of 10 movie. It's as close to perfect as perfect can be without being perfect. So I love
this. I feel at peace. My soul is at peace, because this viewing experience was what I wanted from Oppenheimer. I finally got what I wanted.
I hate it. Well, also to talk about getting what you want. The way this movie concludes, and obviously it's supposed to be dark. It's foreshadowing, the character that Atreides will grow up to be, and then some would define as a dictator. But you wanted him to ball out of control and fuck these people up. And he did in spades. It was amazing. And you're supposed to feel bad rooting for him, because he supposedly turns into a dictatorial maniac, space Hitler, as some would say. But you don't care that you're rooting for him in the moment. You're like, yeah, fuck him up, And they did that. They didn't hold back from that. He's like, no, he wins. He wins, and the message is supposed to be, it's kind of bad that he won, but I'm not feeling that right now. And I know I'm supposed to. So whatever.
I mean, there's a reason why David and Goliath is such a primal and instinctual story, right? It speaks to us as humans.
Yeah, it does. It does. Maybe it's trying to tell us, the power that anyone can have within themselves. as if they believe hard enough, and he believes as much as he possibly can. So yeah, no, that was good stuff.
That's my rating, 9. I just want to finish this by telling you about a dream about Zendaya that I had
Okay.
2 nights ago.
We are now entering the bonus content realm. So go ahead.
So tell me what your interpretation of this was. So I had a dream where, Zendaya was my GF and I was meeting her, falling in love with her, going on dates and stuff. And then I meet her father, who's a ventriloquist. And he would have this fucking. So she would speak to her dad, and then like he would control this puppet. And then as we were walking as a group, this puppet would like lag behind him, and then the puppet would look at me, give me the finger, and like give me like a slight smile, and just like start insulting me. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like,
that sounds like you may be experiencing a small bit of relationship insecurity. That would probably be what I'd jump to. So it doesn't have to be romantic, but it definitely sounds like it's involving other people's perceptions of you and maybe some insecurity along those lines. If I were to give a Jungian guess, that's what I would say. But that is funny that you had a dream about it. I do like when you have very realistic dreams where you're dating movie stars, and in your dream you're just it's such you're like a narcissist in your dreams where you don't think you're dreaming when you're dating a literal movie star.
She wasn't Zendaya in this one. She was like a normal girl that lived next to my house.
Oh, so, yeah. You know what? When I was as young as could be, one of my first dreams where I got in a relationship was when Lindsay Lohan. What was the movie? What was the movie that they did the remake of?
Right?
No, it was before that when they did a remake of the. Not quite that one, but you're close. The movie where she has twins. She is a twin with someone. It's The Parent Trap. Okay.
Oh,
it wasn't long seen. Well, the original isn't her, but that was made 20 years before that. Lindsay Lohan and her twin, which was also Lindsay Lohan, were following me around, jumping over lava pits. And, they both said they wanted to date me. And I, for some reason, didn't think that was strange. And eventually I woke up and I was like, nah, I got to get back there. I need to get back into that level, World 8-4 with the Lindsay Lohan twins, crushing on me, so. And
how fucked up is that? You wake up from a good dream, and because you're too excited from the dream, you just can't fall back asleep. It's impossible. It's so annoying.
I know. Yeah, that was kind of like a dream I had recently where I was hanging out with Aaron Rodgers, and he was a movie, like the star he is in real life.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, and everyone was like, who is this guy that Aaron Rodgers is hanging out with? They were like talking about it on news shows, and it was me, and we were just friends. We were just chilling. And then he gave me some like Lamborghini cell phone, which is, this advanced super expensive cell phone. And then I woke up. I think we were in a swamp at some point too. Yeah, I don't know. We don't need to go into dreams and their meanings in this one. So, but yeah, Dune, 9 out of 10 from the both of us. So more movie reviews to come. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining us today, guys, and more to come.